Good morning. This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a great week so far. This is our last housing call of 2023. Can't believe that is already here. So after this, we will be back on January 9th, 2024. And remember, if you want to go back and listen to a past podcast or review the call notes, you can visit our website at nchousing.org/podcast, or you can search for us on Spotify or anywhere you really get your podcast from. Just look for Housing Matters, the number 2, NC. We are still accepting workshop proposals for Bringing It Home. They are due on January 12th. Our Bringing It Home conference on ending homelessness in North Carolina is on June 4th through the 5th in 2024 in partnership with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, ESG office, the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness, and ourselves. So we're calling for presentation proposals. The presentations will be around an hour and 15 minutes long, and that includes 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A or discussion. So we'll have a link in the call notes. We'll have it both for this call and the next call because that will be sort of the week where the proposals are due. And you can click the link in the call notes to find out what kind of topic areas that we're interested in. I also wanted to give you all a few highlights from 2023, just a sneak peek. But we've had over 40 housing calls, and almost 2,500 people have called in. That doesn't count downloads. And also, in just looking at some of our data, your favorite Housing Matters pieces seem to be about the federal debt ceiling agreement, an overview of key housing appropriations, our county profiles, the Senate releasing their fiscal 23 through 25 budget, the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, our policy brief about the dedicated revenue sources for the North Carolina Housing Trust Fund, and also a balancing through honoring our past, the Black Trailblazers in Housing, and the Out of Reach report in 2023. By the end of the year, we'll have additional highlights for you that includes sort of a more policy-oriented summary. But I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for listening and engaging with us. And remember that, building this housing movement and getting the policies we need, backed by the resources that meet the scale of the need, really takes all of us. Moving on to federal budget updates. The House adjourned for holiday resource. They're gone, y'all. Meaning any hope for a tax deal and spending bill is postponed until their return on January 9th. The Senate delayed its holiday recess to continue negotiations on a border security deal in order to try and clear a path for some war funding aid for a bill for emergency war funding. When members return on the week of January 8th, they will face a really fast approaching deadline, January 19th, for fiscal 2024 spending bills and additional priorities like a tax package and the emergency war funding bill that they're negotiating over now. To read more about the latest versions of the THUD fiscal 24 budgets, you can click the call notes. Just a reminder, THUD stands for Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, and that is where a lot of the housing and community development funding lives. The Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act reached its 200th co-sponsor in the House last week. There are officially 100 Democrats and 100 Republicans sponsoring this legislation. We are still going. State and district fact sheets will be linked in the call notes for you with the latest data on the impact of the housing credit. And we also have several previous calls where we look and dive into the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. Looking at just the impact for North Carolina, up to an additional 39,000 additional homes could be financed in North Carolina just by the primary unit financing provisions in this legislation. Last week, HUD released Part 1 of the 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report. This report found that more than 650 people were experiencing homelessness on a single night in January 2023, which is a 12% increase from 2022. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the National Alliance to End Homelessness, they released a joint statement explaining that this increase in homelessness is the predictable consequence of several things: a severe housing crisis, the depletion of pandemic resources and protections, significantly higher rents and other costs, and continued inaction by Congress. Affordable housing advocates have been warning that homelessness would likely increase as state and other local emergency rental assistance programs have run out of funding. The last eviction protections have expired, and rents and other costs continue to increase, which leads to eviction filings in many communities reaching or surpassing pre-pandemic levels. Taking a look at North Carolina, among largely urban continuums of care in the U.S., Fayetteville reported the highest rate of individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness, about 91%. Among major cities, Raleigh reported the fourth highest rate of people experiencing chronic unsheltered homelessness. 83% of people experiencing chronic homelessness are unsheltered. Among largely suburban continuums of care, Asheville reported the fifth highest number of veterans experiencing homelessness, around 195 individuals. And among largely urban continuums of care, Durham reported the third highest percentage of families experiencing unsheltered homelessness. 25% of families experiencing homelessness are unsheltered. The U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness Director Jeff Olivet released a statement on December 15th last week that summarized the actions and investments and organized them according to the solutions in the the Federal Strategic Plan to Prevent and End Homelessness. That's a federal plan by the Biden administration with an ambitious goal to reduce homelessness by 25% by 2025. So those links to both the Part 1 of that 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report, as well as the statement from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, will be linked in the call notes for you. Moving on to state updates. The final draft of the 2024 North Carolina Qualified Allocation Plan, or QAP, was released on December 13th. Remember, the QAP is sort of the guidelines, the policy guidelines for low-income housing tax credit developers as they apply for tax credits in the coming year. We've linked both the final draft and the draft copy that shows changes from the 2023 QAP. Just to highlight a few of the changes, in terms of scoring, the 2024 QAP took community center out of the public facilities category and included it with senior centers. A greenway or trailhead now qualifies as a public facility if it has dedicated parking. There was a second tiebreaker added, so the project with the highest percentage of non-agency awarded and non-related party funding, but this excludes federal equity and bank loans, as a percentage of the total replacement cost at the time of full application submission. So again, the highest percentage of non-agency awarded and non-related party funding as a percentage of the total replacement cost at the time. So projects that are leveraging outside sources that are not related to tax credits, sort of like government assistance, right? Foundation assistance. This seems to be what the second tiebreaker is addressing. The fifth tiebreaker, tenant ownership, must utilize a detached single-family site plan and building design. And the maximum project development cost, which is a negative 10 points, actually was added back in. Other notable changes include an increase to the Workforce Housing Loan Program maximum award from $2 million to $3 million. There was a provision taken away that projects in the Metro Geographic Set-Aside. It took away that provision that said they're ineligible to request Workforce Housing Loan Program funds. For rent increases, the agency must approve all rent increases through the extended use period for properties receiving agency funding. And there's a provision added to income averaging requirements. At least 10% of the qualified low-income units will be affordable to and occupied by households with incomes at or below 30% of the area median income. We've included, again, both of those links, the final draft and the draft that shows the red lines, all the differences from 2024 and 2023. To state legislative updates, candidate filing ended on December 15th. And folks are really gearing up for 2024. and a lot of the really important elections that are happening locally at the state and, of course, federal level. Just a reminder that the North Carolina General Assembly state lawmakers, although they're set to convene again tomorrow and a few other times between tomorrow and April 24th, the short session will not begin until April 24th. Short session is the season held in the second even year of the biennium, and during this session, only certain matters can be considered, and they outline it in an adjournment resolution that they vote on. So we'll keep an eye on their convenings and if anything is related to housing or any potential technical corrections regarding the fiscal 23-25 state budget that impacts our work. Moving to local community updates. Economists from the London School of Economics and UC Boulder recently published findings about corporate landlords and how they reduce home ownership in Black Charlotte neighborhoods. The research from this study found that 80% of single-family homes purchased by corporate landlords are in Black neighborhoods, and that Black neighborhoods are disproportionately affected by corporate landlords. And the Charlotte Observer explains that this is some of the most direct research that examines the effects of corporate landlords purchasing single-family homes. Last week, leaders from the urban ministries of Durham and St. Philip's met with Durham City and County officials to present plans for a 7-story homeless service center. The building will provide an emergency shelter for up to 300 people. And even though the meeting didn't yield any firm commitments from officials, the elected officials did reiterate the need for a unified city and county approach to housing and homelessness. Construction is starting on the bus rapid transit line along New Bern Avenue, but there are still some Raleigh residents that worry it will do more harm than good. This past week, Indy Week published an in-depth story exploring the potential impacts of rezoning along Raleigh's bus rapid transit system on the historically Black community in Southeast Raleigh. Activists have voiced concern about gentrification, housing affordability, and displacement, and specifically, several people are concerned that the density bonuses are targeting people who earn less than 80% of the area median income, as opposed to lower-income families most in need of housing. There was some similar sentiments voiced in Asheville last week when city council members started examining the effectiveness of land use incentive grants to adequately address the pervasive affordable housing shortage and meet the needs of families earning less than 80% AMI target. Moving on to reports and resources. We have several. The 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report that I mentioned, Part 1, we have that linked here as well. NCHFA released a great piece about who is experiencing housing cost burden in North Carolina. Lindsay did a great job writing this, and they have several great data visualizations that I think are really important in expressing why cost burden matters to express affordable housing need and how it just really does a good job of painting that picture. The Duke Margolis Center also released a early childhood housing instability and homelessness in North Carolina policy brief, where they summarize an early childhood action plan that was released earlier this year, I believe in October. Some events coming up in the new year. January 17th at 6:30 p.m. at the Hayti Heritage Center in Durham. In-person event, $25 or sliding cost by our partners over at the Budget and Tax Center. Economy for All 2024, Building a Better North Carolina. This is going to be a great event, you all, so if you're able to make it, click the link in the housing call notes and make sure you sign up. They're going to have a great speaker, and Dr. McCartan, I believe her name is. The second event is a webinar, Housing Technology Series event, Part 2, Planning for New Supply, and this is a partnership with HUD and the Turner Housing Innovation Labs on January 18th, 2024 from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the news, there are a few different pieces. The New York Times published a piece about how record rent burdens batter low-income life. Again, another piece highlighting cost burden and its impacts disproportionately on low-income renters. The Pew Charitable Trust did a survey and finds that large majority of people favor policies to enable more housing. Another piece from the Charlotte Observer highlights that when North Carolina HOAs want to block or pass legislation, they often get their way. And sort of an analysis they did of HOA sort of induced or facilitated foreclosures or liens and filings of that nature. That's all I have for you all today. There are a few other links that I'll let you all explore on your own time. But I hope you have a great rest of your 2023. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in 2024 on January 9th.